Right now, voting is underway. We're anticipating record voter turnout as people in 12 states head to the polls. We've already seen busy polling stations and very long lines.
Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are both expecting big wins across the board. Clinton has momentum after a landslide victory in South Carolina. Recent polls show her leading Bernie Sanders in states like Georgia, Virginia, and Texas. She's hoping to secure enough delegates to essentially lock up the nomination.
As for the Republicans, nearly half of the delegates needed to secure the nomination are on the line today. We're joined now by our senior political editor, Steve Chaggaris, here in New York, and Daily Beast reporter Patricia Murphy, who is in Atlanta. Welcome both. Steve, let me turn to you first. Donald Trump is expected to pick up a large number of delegates today. If he sweeps the day or wins the majority, will the Republican Party have to come to grips with him as their nominee?
Well,
that's
the question.
Will they be able to?
Well, that's the other question,
yeah.
right? We don't know if they're able to. We're getting it's growing. I think after what happened over the weekend and him being asked about whether he denounces David Duke and the KKK, you're seeing a lot of mainstream Republicans publicly now coming out and suggesting that they wouldn't be able to deal with Trump as the nominee. But if he wins big tonight, he's going to be rolling on a path to the nomination. It's going to be really hard, if not impossible, to derail that. So, I mean, the number of delegates that he could possibly win tonight, even if he doesn't win Texas, if Cruz wins in Texas, but if Trump wins everywhere else by big margins, he's going to have such a delegate lead that it's going to really be hard to derail him at that point. So within the rules of the party and the way it's set up in terms of the nomination, it's going to be difficult for mainstream Republicans to try to do anything different. Whether they have to come to grips with it, that's going to be another question, and it'll be interesting to see how they try to deal with this moving forward. There's all sorts of talk about different ideas of maybe running a third party, maybe trying to do something at the convention to try to derail his nomination, but you know, he'll be on the way to getting the majority of delegates if he wins big tonight.
Let's talk about his latest controversy, right, which has to do with the KKK and David Duke. And, you know, the support that he's been receiving from David Duke and other white supremacist groups definitely causing some controversy. In fact, we just recently heard from House Speaker Paul Ryan. He actually commented, and he really doesn't like to comment on the race. He said that before, but let's listen to what he had to say just to clarify things.
Today, I want to be very clear about something. If a person wants to be the nominee of the Republican Party, there can be no evasion and no games. They must reject any group or cause that is built on bigotry. This party does not prey on people's prejudices. We appeal to their highest ideals. This is the party of Lincoln. We believe all people are created equal in the eyes of God and our government.
Steve, Paul Ryan has said before that his preference is not to wade into the presidential race, but this is maybe the second time he felt that he needed to say something. What do you make of this?
Well, first of all, the Republican Party has tried in the last few years to really try to broaden the tent and to be more inclusive and to have candidates who are speaking in a more inclusive way, to try to draw more than just older white voters into the party. And this suggestion that Trump is not really speaking out against the KKK and David Duke, it has mainstream Republicans wondering what is going on here. How can we nominate somebody who is not inclusive? And so it's raising concerns. And now Paul Ryan, who is the Speaker of the House, high up in the Republican hierarchy, basically saying you got to denounce these guys. And it just, you know, it's. I think a lot of people are asking, at least a lot of mainstream Republicans are asking, why hasn't he done that? Just blatantly done that yet.
Patricia, do you think that this is sort of a sign that Republicans are concerned that this may have long-term damage when it comes to the Republican Party?
Absolutely. For Paul Ryan to come out and do this, he has said many times, I don't want to get involved in this race. He has to remain neutral because he's the chairman of the convention. He's come out only twice this entire cycle to talk about other candidates, and both times have been about Donald Trump. First was when Trump suggested a ban on Muslims, and now when he has refused or had a hard time denouncing the KKK, that sets Republicans' attempts to broaden their tent, as Steve was saying, back 10, 20, 30 years. I saw Marco Rubio speaking yesterday in Atlanta. His message was directly that. He was saying to voters, if we elect Donald Trump, and he said it very specifically, very explicitly, we will lose the Republican Party for a generation. And I think Republicans, we hear this kind of anxiety all over the place place. They are worried not only about the Republican Party, many of them are worried about their own jobs. They're starting to look at some primaries that Republicans may have a hard time closing up because of this new wave of Donald Trump voters. Nobody in the Republican Party knows exactly who Donald Trump is attracting. They're excited, of course, to get new voters, but if these aren't the types of voters that they say their party stands for, who are they as a party at that point? So I think this is absolutely an existential crisis, really, for the Republican Party, for Donald Trump to be doing so well, and for no Republican in the party to have had really the interest, the bravery, the courage, and now the opportunity to go against him any harder than they have until this very late hour.
So Patricia, let me ask you then, the fact that Paul Ryan even has to say something like this means that those that are in control of the GOP feel that there is a perception now that the party is not strong enough in its rejection of some of these ideas that Donald Trump has been espousing. Do you agree then with, or has your reporting borne out some of the things that we've been seeing in the press? Robert Kagan, for example, the well-known neoconservative, saying that Donald Trump is actually a creation of the Republican Party. Is there any water to that?
I think that absolutely. When I talk to supporters of Donald Trump, they are saying maybe Donald Trump isn't the very best candidate they ever could have come up with, but they see an enormous leadership vacuum in Washington. They see the Tea Party representatives and senators who they voted in 2010, 2012 to change the system. They believe the system has not changed at all. And that I hear word for word sometimes from Republican voters and now Donald Trump voters saying, how many times do I have to say it? I'm not going to tell you again. I want things to change. So I think the Republicans absorbed the Tea Party into their fold, certainly took on the majorities that the Tea Party gave them, but they really didn't change the way they were doing business in Washington. And I think that that is very much coming back to haunt them with these exact same voters who 2010, 2012, 2014 have said again and again and again, we want it to be different. They're not seeing enough change in Washington. As a result of that, I think that the Republican Party establishment, if we can call it that anymore, has absolutely opened the door for somebody like Donald Trump to come in with an enormous, visible attempt to change not only the Republican Party, but politics and the country itself. I think it's opened the door to that 100%.
Steve, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing in the exit polls, just in the 4 contests so far, that Republicans who are voting in these primaries and caucuses feel that the party is not representing them. And so this is what's being borne out now. You have a segment of the party that is really upset as to how national Republicans are representing them. And so I think this is a result of that.
Okay, so let's look at the other candidates and whether or not people feel that they can represent them. What do they need to do to stay alive moving forward? Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz.
I mean, I think part of it, you're seeing what's going on here. You're seeing Cruz and Rubio, especially Rubio, really going after Trump. There's a sense that there's an audience for that, somebody to stand up against Trump. But I think they need to win. I mean, that's really the bottom line. At the end of the day, this is about collecting delegates. And the only way you collect these delegates is by winning. And so Cruz, if he wins in Texas, that's good. But he has to win big in Texas. And then he has to take that and try and start winning next weekend on March 15th when there's winner-take-all states. Rubio, where is he going to win tonight? We don't think he's going to win tonight. He's pretty much admitted he doesn't think he's going to win tonight. So that's another 11 states, by the way, added to the 4 that he has already lost. Yes, he's getting some delegates here and there, but he's waiting for now 2 more weeks to try to build momentum to a winner-take-all state in Florida, which is his home state, which, by the way, he's losing in the polls there right now, to basically make an argument that I can be the nominee even though I'm not winning at all. And so that's not really an argument. You've got to start winning some of these contests.
Patricia, tomorrow the Republican super PAC, is releasing a new attack ad on Donald Trump, and the commercial accuses Trump University of scamming thousands of students. Could something like this have a negative impact on Donald Trump? So far, nothing is stuck, but could this stick?
Literally, to start this ad by the day after Super Tuesday is literally $1 short and a day late. I mean, it's unbelievable that nobody has had the will to run this ad. We have all known, all reporters have known about Trump University. The reporting started about this months and months ago. The lawsuits were filed years ago. So the fact that no Republican, no super PAC, none of these mega donors have had the idea or the will to do this before, it's literally going to be too late tomorrow. So I do think, though, the attempt, and we saw Rubio starting to do this, the attempt is to undercut what Donald Trump is selling out on the stump as a scam. And so if they can say, and Rubio has said this literally, he scammed people with Trump University, he is scamming the American voters, the message is identical. He's promising you will get rich, your life will be better, I will take you to the promised land. And Rubio is trying to say, he's done it before on a small scale, he's doing it before on a national scale. That's a very good message, I think, that not only to encourage people not to vote against Donald Trump, but to encourage other voters to start to coalesce behind somebody who is not Donald Trump, to start to vote more strategically if your effort is to keep the nomination away from Donald Trump. That probably would have been a great idea the day before the Iowa caucuses, a month before the caucuses, but to wait until the day after Super Tuesday, to me, is just literally malpractice, political malpractice, if anybody wanted to do something about Trump when it would have made any difference.
Yeah, in fact, our own Juliana Goldman has reported on Trump University for both CBS This Morning and Evening News and here at CBSN. So this has been out there, Steve.
It's been out there, and I totally agree with Patricia. It's unbelievable. I mean, these are ads now that are going to help the Democrats running against Donald Trump in the fall. It's too late for the Republicans, really, almost, to do anything about this. This is research that's been out there. It took them until last Thursday at the debate. That was the first time any of this stuff came up. And what's interesting is Rubio did bring this stuff up, Trump University, other business dealings that Trump has had, policy differences that they have with Trump. But they waited until that last debate before. And the question is there's not enough time for this stuff to sort of bake in. I mean, you look at Super Tuesday, almost 40% of the votes on Super Tuesday were early votes, whether absentee or early voting. So you already got
He's banking votes.
4 out of 10 votes that happened before any of this stuff even came out.
Mm-hmm.
Where were these accusations and allegations and criticisms 2 months ago, 3 months ago? That's the time to, the strategy is just highly questionable.
Yeah, so you mentioned that this stuff may work, not for the Republicans, but it may work for the Democrats down the road. Speaking of the Democrats, looks like Hillary Clinton is going to do quite well today. What's fueling her momentum? Why do people think that she's probably going to sweep Super Tuesday?
So she won in Nevada, and then she won big in South Carolina, right? And in South Carolina, she won among African Americans by an unbelievably huge margin, 50-plus points. And that was really sort of the indication that this might be a steamroll to the convention for her, mainly because, especially on Super Tuesday, there are several southern states that are voting that have large African-American populations. Sanders was just unable, after trying really, really hard to make inroads, unable to do it in South Carolina. And the thinking is if he couldn't do it in South Carolina, he's not going to be able to do it in these southern states today. The southern states are the largest, most of the states in the South are the largest delegate hauls today. There are a couple other states where Sanders is competing, but he's got to win in the states that he's competing in, but he has to win big because she's going to win big in the South. It's just she's going to pull in way more delegates than he is.
Patricia, Bernie Sanders reiterated today that he will fight all the way to the Democratic convention. I want to play a bit of what he had to say.
The fact that when we began, we were 70 points behind, and today we are in the lead in a number of states and have closed that gap nationally. The fact that we have shown that millions of people and young people want to transform this country and make it what it can become. We're very proud of what we are doing. We're proud of what we're going to continue to do. This is a campaign that's going to the Philadelphia Convention in July. And I want to thank the millions of supporters throughout this country who are fighting to make real changes in this country.
So, Patricia, I mean, if Hillary Clinton wins a majority of the states today, I mean, and Bernie Sanders perhaps makes inroads in states like Vermont, obviously his home state, Minnesota, Massachusetts, Colorado, can he continue down this path if he's not winning states that are demographically representative of the Democratic Party?
He can absolutely continue, and that is because he's able to raise so much money through small dollar donations. And we all know that candidates really never drop out of a race. They just run out of money and can't run for president anymore. So I think that we will certainly see Bernie Sanders continue. And, there are really two kinds of presidential candidates. There's the kind that are running for power to literally win the White House, and then there are the kind that are running for influence, to influence the conversation. I think that Bernie Sanders started as the second kind of candidate. He was running just to bring certain topics into the conversation, income inequality, things that he's been talking about for a long time. somewhere along the way he became a candidate who had a chance to really do very well in some of these primary and caucuses. But because he didn't do well, especially in South Carolina, I totally agree. When he lost South Carolina by a 50-point margin, and because it was with such a gigantic deficit among African-American voters, that's the Democratic base. I mean, you can't get 15% of the Democratic base in a primary and expect to be a legitimate candidate going forward to win the White House. But I think he has influenced the conversation so far. He wants to. I think Hillary Clinton has been wise and would be wise to continue to listen to what the Sanders voters are saying. You know, we talked about the Republicans sort of ignored the message of the Tea Party. Hillary Clinton, I think, needs to be very mindful of what these Sanders voters are saying. 3.6 million people have given him money. That is a huge force within the party that cares enough to send money to push this conversation forward. So I think Clinton is really on her way to the nomination. I think it'll be very important for her to bring those Sanders voters into the fold by continuing to adjust her message to respond to those voters, because she's going to need all of them in November. If Donald Trump ends up being the nominee, I think all the rules are out the window. She doesn't know who's going to turn out. Nobody knows who's going to turn out. She needs to drive her numbers up very, very high to respond to that. And the Sanders voters will be a big part of that.
Patricia Murphy in Atlanta, thank you for your analysis. Steve Chaggaris here in New York. We appreciate it, guys.
Thanks.